Hello, I'm Dr. Monty Hayes, and here is another video lesson for Kirkwood's Distance Learning High School Completion Program in English. We've been studying the structure of argument, the quality of arguments. We've been analyzing different arguments and comparing them. Today what I'd like to do, in part because, as you'll see, reading and writing are very much embedded in one another. Students who read better tend to write better, and vice versa. We can be more analytical. We can look at the elements of composition and how well they're working. Today what I'd like to do is use a resource that many students use to prepare for standardized tests and look at some sample student essays in order to see how some are more successful than others. This is an ACT prompt, and students write their own opinions, supporting them again with reasons and evidence, maybe not so much evidence. We'll look at a few of them to determine why some are better than others. And the factors include the quality of writing and also the quality of thinking. So let's take a look. Here's the sample prompt. Intelligent machines. Many of the goods and services we depend on daily are now supplied by intelligent automated machines rather than human beings. Robots build cars and other goods on assembly lines where once there were human workers. Many of our phone conversations are now conducted not with people, but with sophisticated technologies. We can now buy goods at a variety of stores without the help of a human cashier. Automation is generally seen as a sign of progress. But what is lost when we replace humans with machines? Given the accelerating variety and prevalence of intelligent machines, it is worth examining the implications and meaning of their presence in our lives. Okay, one thing that we can do as readers is we can, follow along as prompted and think about where we've seen intelligent machines and where we like them and where we don't so much. I also see that students who are reading this are going to need a fairly sophisticated vocabulary in order to keep up. Read and carefully consider these perspectives. Okay, here we get the instructions. We get the first step. Read these. Each suggests a particular way of thinking about the increasing presence of intelligent machines. So what the authors here are hoping is that students reading through this, perhaps not stumbling too much over the vocabulary, though frankly I wouldn't be surprised if many readers had to look up a couple words or guess from context, or perhaps reread it, not a bad strategy. What the authors are hoping now is that students will have mobilized their prior experience and then can perhaps recognize their thinking in one of these perspectives. All right, perspective 1. What we lose with the replacement of people by machines is some part of our own humanity. Even our mundane daily encounters no longer require from us basic courtesy, respect, and tolerance from other people. Tolerance for other people. All right. Machines are good at low-skill repetitive jobs and at high-speed extremely precise jobs. In both cases, they work better than humans. This efficiency leads to a more prosperous and progressive world for everyone. Perspective 3. Intelligent machines challenge our long-standing ideas about what humans are or can be. This is good because it pushes both humans and machines toward new, unimagined possibilities. All right, so these are the options for the student writers. So they might be limited somewhat by those options. If we think about a claim can be qualified. This is good in these cases and inappropriate in these. I don't see that so much here. The third is perhaps more future-looking, more open-ended, but we get machines are bad, machines are good. Maybe. Again, it depends. But these are the prompts the students have to work with. We'll look at the instructions, we'll look at the sample essays, and again, as you read, think about what makes them more and less successful, and don't focus only, it might be the first thing you notice, but don't focus only on the writing as writing, the number of errors, the elegance of the phrasing, but focus on the thinking as well. How well are these arguments crafted? How well are the claims supported with reasons and evidence? So here's the essay task for students taking this standardized test. Write a unified, coherent essay, meaning nothing extraneous, no rambling, in which you evaluate multiple perspectives on the increasing presence of intelligent machines. In your essay, be sure to analyze and evaluate the perspectives given, state and develop your own perspective on the issue, explain the relationship between your perspective and those given. Your perspective may be in full agreement with any of the others, in partial agreement, or wholly different. Aha! So I'm now readjusting my thoughts as readers. I was anticipating an instruction to choose one and defend it. This asks for much more. This asks for analysis and then taking a stance. This is a common pattern, frankly, in a lot of college composition curricula, that we ask students to analyze arguments and then to take a stand. Your perspective may again be in full agreement, in partial agreement, or wholly different, but whatever the case, support your ideas with logical reasoning and detailed, persuasive examples. All right, we'll look to see whether the students have in fact done so. And again, this is an object lesson in not assuming we know what the directions are going to say, but in reading them all the way through. All right, well, here we go. And this sample essay didn't score so well. Well, machines are good, but they take people jobs. Like if they don't know how to use it, they get fired and they'll send someone else, they'll find someone else, and it's more easier with machines, but sometimes they don't need people because of this machines do their own job, and there may be many people that lack on their job, but the intelligent machines sometimes may not work, or they'll break easy, and it's a waste of money on this machines, and they're really expensive to buy, but they help a lot at the same time, and it help a lot, but at the same time, this intelligent machines work, and some don't work, but many store buy them and end up broken or not working, but many stores get them and end up wasting money on this intelligent machines. But how does it help us and the community? Because some people get fired because they do not need him because of this machines. Many people are losing jobs because of this machines. Okay, so this student is in a test-taking situation. He or she has so many minutes to read through the prompt, think about what he or she thinks, analyze the sample perspectives given, and take a stand. We'll notice again the quality of writing. We see spelling errors, we see grammatical errors. What I see getting in the student's way is that he or she is running a lot of reasons together. We have, a number of run-on sentences. If the student were to tease out some of those reasons, and we do see some offering of examples, but the examples themselves aren't fully illustrated. A person could get fired, a machine in a store might get broken. So the student's taking a couple steps along the path of finding examples, coming up with examples to support his or her thoughts, but not really fully developing those. So the student needs to slow down and clarify. And that's why the student didn't do so well. It also gets what we call circular. The student repeats him or herself instead of, again, fully developing the reasons that he or she offers. Machines have taken a huge role in our day-to-day lives. They can either affect us in a good way or in a bad way. Granted, machines have impacted many people in the workplace, but they help us finish the jobs. There are many ups and downs to the development of machines. So the student's trying to write an introduction, the student's giving some thought to form. It's pretty darn generic. Machines have taken a huge role in our day-to-day lives. A lot of essays start that way. Students have to start somewhere. They have to set the scene. It's good that the student is thinking about that, about genre, about audience, but this is a pretty intro speak first line. All right, then we get the student maybe working on a qualified claim. They can either affect us in a good way or a bad way. Granted, machines have impacted many people in the workplace, but they help us finish the job. So again, the student's trying to look at the complexity of the issue and look at how quickly the student moves from bad writing to somewhat thoughtful writing. There are many ups and downs to the development of the machine, perhaps repeating him or herself, using a cliche. but framing the essay. Some people have become so dependent on machines, they start to lose their humanity. Machines can take away the personal aspect of life. For example, we lose basic courtesy, respect, and tolerance for people due to using machines so much. Some machines that could make that happen are cell phones, computers, and video games. When people purchase one of these machines, they usually are on it and depend on it all the time. Due to the lack of self-motivation through machines, we could lose our common courtesy. So some development of the reason there could be more, it's fairly general, but the student seems to be suggesting that when we're on our devices all the time, we're not interacting courteously with one another. In the workplace, machines have affected jobs dramatically. They can perform at low-skill repetitive jobs and at high-speed precise jobs. They mostly are better than humans because they are more precise within their work and they are less likely to produce an error. Although machines do help the workplace, they can also harm it as well. By the advancement of so many machines, an abundance of people are losing their jobs due to them. Machines can have a positive and negative effect in the workplace. So again, the student is somewhat thoughtful, also incredibly vague, and somewhat circular. But the student is trying to, I think, put together a considered response to the prompt. We do see a step down the path toward examples without full illustration. Next paragraph. Although machines have a good amount of drawbacks, so some transitional language, they also have a positive amount on us today. I'm guessing if the student had a chance to revise that, to sit down in a workshop with a partner or an instructor and read that out loud, the student would probably tweak that wording. It's not exactly what I believe the student means. Due to the advancement of machines, people are starting to push themselves to a whole new level, another cliche. People are becoming more educated and precise in the workplace. Also, many people are starting to study machines and enter new, unimagined possibilities into the world. Machines can change the world in a positive way as well as a negative way. So here again, we see some unity. The student continues that qualified stance. The student continues saying, sometimes machines are good for us in the workplace, sometimes not so much, and beyond the workplace as well. So the student is, following the prompt more than the previous student, not only through clearer writing, but through perhaps more sophisticated thinking, but it remains somewhat vague. The student is trying to formulate a thesis, trying to develop an argument, but not doing it fully, and that's why this gets a middling score. In conclusion, machines affect, with an A, the lives of everybody in our world today. Whether they affect us in our home or on the job, they continue to change people's outlook on trying new ideas. The development of machines has its ups and downs. Oh, here we get that again. For example, they motivate people to work harder in order to compete with them. This might belong in its own paragraph rather than in the conclusions. I see students do that quite frequently. Come up with another idea, often a good one, at about the time that they are finishing their essays. In that case, it might be worth it to move that up and build a paragraph around it. Although they can demolish our common courtesy, machines play a huge role in technology today and will continue to shape the world's future. So it's unified, but it's not thoroughly convincing because it remains vague and circular, even though the student is trying to exemplify and explain. Let's take a look at another one. All right, this essay scored a 5. It is no secret that today's workforce no longer consists entirely of people. That's a fairly stylish line. Rather, machines are being developed to complete many of the tasks which humans have traditionally done. This can greatly increase productivity and efficiency of simple, repetitive tasks. Again, the student is borrowing directly from the prompt. That's a common test-taking strategy. Many people view this as a great positive and point out that it leads to a more uniform and less expensive product, which is better for everyone. That's fairly specific. However, Some people are more wary of this popular trend of automating the workforce and question whether this progress is truly positive. Their concerns, though, are outweighed by the benefits these machines offer. So the student is signaling or signposting where the argument will go, is offering, indeed, a claim, but also being mindful of the prompt. Again, we want to follow the instructions. Sometimes we, like I did, assume we know what the instructions are going to say. This student is mindful that not only must he or she take a stand and defend it, but that the instructions call for student writers to analyze the positions given in the prompt boxes. It is the popular view among companies which are moving toward automation that robots can do many tasks better than humans. For example, in the automotive industry, most of a car's individual components are manufactured by pre-programmed robots, which have much greater and more precise output than would be possible for a human. In addition, robots cut down the cost of production by a considerable amount. If a company hires an employee to complete a simple task for $50,000 per year, but could instead buy a machine for a one-time purchase of $30,000, it is far more cost-effective to buy the machine. Lower cost of production means that the goods produced can now be sold at a lower price point, which passes the savings on to the consumer. Companies producing goods rightly contend that the use of machines to complete low-skilled jobs has only positive impact for everyone. So this is why this is successful, or here are a couple reasons why, a few reasons why. The student really develops the example. It's specific. The student analyzes the argument, comments upon the argument, and the student does use fairly sophisticated diction and clear conventional writing. So stylistically, substantively, and in terms of following the instructions, of offering examples and analyzing the viewpoints given, the student is successful. Beyond these benefits for industry, transition, some believe, analyzing arguments, that machines will shape the future for the human race. Innovation and invention of new, more intelligent machines can push us as humans toward new, unimagined possibilities. For example, before the first airplane was invented, people could only dream of human flight. But at the moment of takeoff, a whole new world of unimaginable possibilities, okay, we're getting a little bit repetitive with our diction, even though it's good diction, was suddenly within our grasp. But the student also, by adding this example, takes his or her essay beyond the vague into something that readers can follow. It becomes more persuasive. Through even just that one invention, an entire multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry was born, and our lives improved and advanced in a multitude of ways. Who can know what great advancements may be brought about by a more intelligent machine than what we possess today? The possibilities are endless. So not completely above circularity, but with some specificity in this paragraph. And I would offer an aside here. Students often think the longer the paper is, the longer the essay is, the longer the test response is, the better. It's not simply about being longer, it's about being more developed. And even within this paragraph, we can see sentences that enhance it and sentences that seem perhaps, or phrases at least, that seem somewhat redundant. There are those who are less enthusiastic about all this progress and advancement. They argue that by not having to interact with fellow humans, we no longer are required to be courteous and have tolerance for others. Again, following the prompt, building the essay upon the prompt, a common test-taking or assignment writing strategy. We also see that with the student's use of sequencing, leading with what he or she wants to support, concluding and giving less attention to what he or she wishes to dispute, the student is organizing this essay in a strategic fashion according to his or her claim, his or her take on the issue. While this may be true, this is a minor cost for a major increase in efficiency. Take the example of self-checkout systems in grocery stores. Self-checkout permits consumers to procure their goods and get out of the store quickly. This might seem like a small time saver, but considering how often this experience is repeated reveals a cumulative effect. Across time, consumers end up saving hours, which improves the efficiency of their daily lives, allowing them to spend time on things that are of greater interest and meaning to them. And indeed, the student spends more time refuting the claim and using an example not in support of or not to capture the opposing argument, but an example that in fact refutes that claim. So strategically, this is organized with more time and more attention given to arguments and examples that support the student's claim. So let's take a look at the final paragraph in this student essay. Whether humans like it or not, machines are becoming more and more popular in the workplace and are decreasing the need for humans to work those jobs. This can lead to advancement of society, a greater end product or service, and even a lower consumer cost of goods. Many people are frightened of change, but unfortunately for them, the past is gone and now we must look to the future. And this is a conclusion. It gets more general. Perhaps some of these reasons are more developed in the essay than others. What do you think?